And welcome to Cruising With Kayfabe. I'm Mongo.
I'm Emily.
And today's episode is titled Live, Laugh, BRUV. And I guess you could say it's all about the Billy Good himself, Will Ospreay.
What better person to talk about after the year of 2024, the year of Ospreay?
I was going to say 100%. If he's not getting Wrestler of the Year, I don't know what the criteria is anymore, because since he arrived in AEW officially at Revolution in March, from all the way up to World's End against Okada, I haven't seen a bad match out of Ospreay this year.
No, we watched him break his ass live. We've also watched him every pay-per-view kick ass.
Watched him take a Tiger Driver, watched him give Tiger Drivers, watched him literally live up to his nickname of the Aerial Assassin. Had that awesome Assassin's Creed entrance at All In. I mean, I know we always joke on the show that I have a man crush on Ospreay, but I mean, look at the dude in the ring. He's a fucking video game character.
It doesn't matter who you are. If you're not crushing on Ospreay, do you know wrestling?
I mean, and some people don't like the flippy stuff, but I'll just say, don't give me all that flippy shit.
He doesn't just do that, though. That's what people don't give him enough credit for. Is as awesome as he is as the Aerial Assassin, he's also a technician wizard.
And, he got his start from people who are very much still relevant in the industry today. So Ospreay has always said that what got him into wrestling was TNA Unbreakable 2005, where he watched Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, and AJ Styles have one of the best triple threat matches. And if you actually check out our Patreon, we actually did a watch along of that match because Emily had never actually seen it. So that was the match that inspired him. And that's why I had Emily watch it, but she didn't know. That's why I had her watch it on top of that.
He's always filling in the Easter eggs.
I like to have those little references. I feel like all the great directors and all the great movies out there, they always have these little plot devices. AEW has these little plot devices. I think it just makes for a more compelling story. And, Ospreay's got a very compelling story. He grew up in, England. He went to the school of Lucha Libre. But after seeing that, he decided, 2012 was the year he decided to be a wrestler. And he also took influence from a very famous Japanese legend, Hayabusa. And I'm sure you've seen some of the gear he wore at Forbidden Door, as well as Wrestle Kingdom. He wore the Hayabusa gear with the blessing of the family, because unfortunately Hayabusa would pass away. So he wore the mask, the gear. And I think if you've ever seen him wrestle Hayabusa, that is, you'd see why he's inspired by him. It's the fluidity of how you jump off the ropes to how you move in the ring to your favorite thing, the footwork, when they're almost skating around the ring because they're just so fast.
When you can't keep track of where someone's going and what they're about to do next, it makes it a little more exciting.
It does. And, when we got to talk to Zach Knight, a cheap plug of the interview, if you check it out in our archives at Cruising With Kayfabe on YouTube, Facebook, and all socials, make sure you check it out. But one of the things he said is wrestling is so much more than just one thing. It's everything. And I think that's what made, Will kind of growing up on the UK scene that, because I learned a lot from that Zach interview, that's what the UK scene was. You had the strong style, you had the Lucha Libre, you had the technical, like the Zack Sabre Juniors, you had all these different melting pots of wrestling. And who knew that, a young kid, 93, would grow up and just be one of the best at every style he's done. I mean, again, if you look at his career from 2012 to 2024, 12 years, go back and try to find some bad matches, because I looked on Cage Match and even the low rated matches were still wow.
So you're telling me he's been pretty much this great since the start?
Yeah, he always had that athleticism because him and his friends practice parkour. He talks a lot about that growing up. They go out the playgrounds and, think about that. He's 3 years younger than you. Our generation was definitely into the parkour trend when it came out. I'm not able to do it, but I watched people do it.
I can't do a cartwheel. You want to teach me? Let me know.
That's because you got the T-Rex arms, right? Is that what you always say?
Little T-Rex arms, baby hands.
But it's just knowing that, seeing backyard wrestling and seeing AJ Styles and Hayabusa and Samoa Joe, and then seeing parkour, and just he developed his style. Seeing that, I think, is incredible. Like, he decided to be that Assassin's Creed character, and so again, he evolved all this into himself. And would go on the indies, Rev Pro, really make his name, winning the British heavyweight title. But then AJ Styles told a certain New Japan, hey, check out this kid, Will Ospreay. And he would enter New Japan Wrestling in 2016, which, think about how long ago 2016 is, but also how, not long ago it feels. It feels like Will's been wrestling for 20 years, but he's really been at the top level for not even 10 yet. Isn't that insane to think about?
That is really insane, especially seeing the names like AJ Styles and Zack Sabre Jr. You know, both of them have been around.
Yeah, and he would go, you know, even before New Japan, he would have a match with AJ Styles because he became friends with him, which I think that's freaking cool that you grow up watching someone and then you get to wrestle them and become friends with them. So someone he was inspired to become a wrestler by was now wrestling him in Japan. Because remember, AJ Styles left TNA at the height of his popularity, went over to New Japan, and New Japan really had its big rise again, probably 2013 to 2018. They really had this influx of talent coming from TNA, coming from Ring of Honor, because WWE was, you know, a monopoly, but they wanted to do something different. They didn't all want the WWE system. So New Japan was featuring the strong style, the technical, the AJ Styles, the high flying. So AJ Styles saw Will Ospreay and said, yeah, you fit right in. Now, he didn't go right into the top. He wasn't going into like the G1s. He wasn't going into the heavyweight. He was going into what's called the junior heavyweight division, which, to kind of Americanize that, it's kind of like a light heavyweight division. So not, you know, not like a 880 pounder, not 300 pounder, but like a mix between cruiserweight and right below heavyweight. So, you know, he was a little smaller for his size, but he flew through the supers division. He had that famous match with Ricochet, which our friend Brian, who, if you check out The Undone at their website, wearetheundone.com, I asked him today, I said, hey, what got you into Will Ospreay? Because I like to ask everyone who likes him, like, what was your first Ospreay moment? And he says, you know, I'm going to be cliche like everybody else. And it's that Ricochet Ospreay Super Juniors match from New Japan. And seeing that, you know, 8 years later, they're running that back twice. How wild is that to you? Because that was one of the first matches you saw too.
I think that it was something that was so necessary, because you're like, this is what you based your liking of them off of. Well, now you have them in the same company with people that maybe didn't seek out that match. Let's show them it. Let's give them a little bit of that match. So I think it created more fans for both of them.
100%.
If you weren't already a fan of either of them, because that's what started the fandom. I mean, that's almost how I found Ricochet as well. We didn't watch Ricochet for very long before I saw that match.
You didn't. I saw Mr. 450. Yeah. We also weren't really fully together by then.
Yeah, when we look at wrestling from 2013 to 2018, it was a majority of these same exact people always on television. So you didn't get more than a variety of 20 to 30 people. So when you see the newcomers that came in, you had Aleister Black and Ricochet come in together. They were something different,
Steen,
something innovative.
Adam Cole.
Like, you had people that were really, truly shining on this main roster because they were so different and so athletic.
Well, that's what made NXT Black and Gold so special, is they saw what was going on over in Japan. They're not stupid. You know, regardless of, and this isn't anything towards anything, this is just me pointing something out. If you think about it from a perspective, I'm, you know, booking NXT. I'm seeing Ring of Honor, you know, scouting at who's going to be available. And I'm watching Kushida go against Will Ospreay. I'm watching this Ricochet kid go against Will Ospreay. And I'm watching these clips go viral on YouTube before viral is really a thing. I'm hearing people talk about these wrestlers that have never been in the WWE system, have never been in TNA. What better chance than to take a chance on some of these guys and, you know, have the 205 tournament. You know, they brought in the Cruiserweight Classic to bring in a Zack Sabre Jr. They brought in people from Ring of Honor, like a Adam Cole, like a Kevin Steen, like a Sami Zayn, like you were saying, Aleister Black. They started recognizing this potential. And that's one thing Triple H did well, is he brought all these people in, but he did not bring in an Ospreay, because Ospreay committed to New Japan. That's one thing a lot of people don't know about Ospreay, is he committed long-term to New Japan when he first went there. He was very loyal to them because that was the first company that really gave a chance. I mean, he worked Rev Pro, he won the title, he works Progress, but Super Juniors division, he got, and they rewarded him. He won 3 Super Juniors championships. He dominated that division. He pretty much beat everyone. He made a name for himself. If you look up New Japan Super Juniors from like 2016 to like 2018, 2019, it's all Will Ospreay. He dominates that entire division. If you want to look at some matches, when you listen to the end of the show, we have a bunch of matches we're going to give you. Instead of going in order by every match, we've picked out the top 10 outside of AEW and the top 10 in AEW. There's a lot of the Super Juniors on there, like Amazing Red, like a Jimmy Havoc, like a Kushida, like I said, like an Okada. There's so many people he set foot in the ring with that you didn't think you'd see. He fought Vader in 2015, like before Vader passed away. And it wasn't a great match, but of legendary Big Van Vader, Will Ospreay fought him.
Yes. If you listen to Talk is Jericho, you'll hear more about why we're telling you that that wasn't his favorite match. But that's for you to listen to and for you to decide.
And I mean, I can agree without kind of going into it. I can agree basically his feelings are valid because he's a competitor. And I think we talk about, his matches and we haven't seen a bad match. And I think it's his passion. It's his drive. I feel like he goes out there and he thinks he sucks. And I think he tries to one-up himself every single time he wrestles. I don't know if you notice this, Em, when you watch it. When he's wrestling, it always feels like he's locked in 100% going for gold. Doesn't matter if it's a opening match for the G1 or if it's a weekly show on Dynamite. He's going 100 miles an hour. It could be to his detriment, but when have you ever seen him not go full Ospreay?
Because that's part of what makes Ospreay Ospreay. He gives that 100%. He's always looking to improve, and he's always looking to create more of a craft. I think that's something that comes from working in New Japan. When we talked with Jada, she said the same thing, is that they just have a different style of wrestling that she's now learning. You just saw Anna Jay come back with her improved style. I think that Mariah May coming in, Toni Storm has this, like, these people that we're idolizing at the moment that are very much on top have all been through the New Japan system. And I think that that's very important. Look at Mercedes Moné.
If you look at really how wrestling for TV versus wrestling in New Japan or wrestling on the Indies is so different, I think it helps, like you said, because they're able to adapt the style and bring it to television where it hasn't been seen on television for decades. I agree with you completely. I think everyone who is into wrestling should look into going to the New Japan in Florida and go the dojo. Look into Cheeseburger School in New Jersey because he worked with Jushin Liger. Look into training schools of people who maybe worked at New Japan Strong or gone to Tokyo because
they host things in LA as well.
Yeah, the LA dojo. They do the open school, the gyms. And I think that's kind of what makes Ospreay different because he recognized that he needed to keep bettering himself. And, he's getting towards the tail end of 2018 and he's having a great rivalry with Marty Scurll, Ring of Honor. He's starting to see the Bucks. He's starting to see Kenny Omega. So you now have him feuding with Scurll, Omega, Okada. He's a member of Chaos at this point. So he's making a name for himself. He's growing into who he's going to become. So, 2018, he's still a young pup, in the business, but he's still another foreigner in New Japan.
And at this time, he was dating somebody that was part of NXT UK. And if you look into the history of that, she also worked for Stardom. She was very big across the board. And I think that being able to train with her and other people that were involved in the women's locker room, you can also see that style has transcended over to the women's division, that hard hit, that fast pace. Not saying that he worked with all of the women over there, but the fact that he was able to work with some of them, it really does show. And that is also where he was able to work with Hana and do things with her and be able to check in still now with her mom and do everything around all of that. I believe he also raised money for her.
He did. He helped after she passed away. He was one of the ones who helped raise money kind of in support of her and also ending cyberbullying. And that's one thing is he's a genuine person. He talks on his interviews. We've gotten to talk to him a couple times in person. We get to talk to him again on the cruise. Cannot wait for it. And he just comes off genuine. If you listen to his interviews, he's not trying to, unless he's in a storyline, it's about his opponent. If he's talking about himself or his family, he's not trying to hide it. He's trying to be real. He talks about his neurodivergency. He talks about his ADHD, his autism, his neurospiciness, to call it, because he thinks and he feels the same as a lot of us who have any kind of neurodivergency feel, that it's not a hindrance, that it's something you work with, it's something you can use to your advantage. He found his superpower, and he says that's what made him feel like a superhero, is finding his superpower. And I think that's what I've always kind of connected with Ospreay, because hearing those interviews after seeing these matches, I was like, oh, so he's open about himself. He talks about his struggles. He talks about his successes. He's a realist. I was drawn to him, I
think that's something to touch on as well, because if you do have neurodivergency, look into your strong suits. That's how we survive out here. I mean, I found masking really helped with waitressing. I mean,
we found hobbies. Sometimes you deep dive. I mean, this podcast started as a hobby, and now we love doing it every week. We love doing our lives. We get to talk about Will Ospreay. It's not just me talking to her on the couch and her rolling her eyes because I've said the same thing 363 times. We get to kind of say out what we feel and how seeing him rise, because I really started watching a lot of New Japan and Ring of Honor 2015, 2016. I fell off WWE. I've said that many times on the show before. Emily rediscovered WWE 2014, kind of watched it casually. It wasn't until we got together that she did that deep dive of Bullet Club. So she kind of has that 2018 New Japan. So this is now in the time frame where she has heard of him, but she wasn't fully immersed in him yet. I tried, folks. I tried, but it wasn't until he came on the cruise when she opened her eyes. That's I think that's what opened your eyes, was that cruise.
I enjoy seeing somebody's humbleness and seeing somebody actually care about people. I think that is what, helped me to see Ospreay more than just in the ring and as a wrestler. I think that's why I love AEW so much, is because I've met the majority of the roster through this cruise. Another reason to book. I think that being able to really know them and get to talk to them makes you more of a fan, because you feel like you're watching a friend versus watching wrestling. WWE, yeah, we did get to meet Cody Rhodes on the cruise. That was really special. That was really awesome. But aside from Josh, I haven't met anyone else there, I don't believe. So Gigi Dolan. That's what makes you want to watch them. It's like, oh my God, that person was so good. They were amazing in person. I want to see them succeed in their life and their goals, because they truly love what they're doing. And that's how for Ospreay, not to go on a huge tangent, but that's with Ospreay, he was just so genuine to us. He did a shout out to our child who couldn't make it on the cruise, telling him he hopes to see him in the future. And he still talks about that. It's been 4 years. He's like, I finally get to meet Will Ospreay. I finally get to do this. This is something this child has looked forward to for 4 years, because he knew that his time would come to meet him.
And look at how Ospreay connects, the good segue here connects to, the kids now. They're seeing this superhero in the ring. You're seeing the Cody who every kid loves. And he is the John Cena of this generation, where all the kids love him. He gives out the weight belts. He's great with the kids. And I'm not knocking that out. I think that's amazing. We need more of that in wrestling, get that future generation. But look in the crowd now. We've seen people dress up with Will Ospreay's coat. We've seen people dress up as Little Darby. It's the ones who realize they have to connect with the fans in and out of the ring. And I think that's what makes him special. And that's what helped him thrive in Japan, because not only does he have that killer instinct in the ring, he gets it. And not a lot of wrestlers get it. They don't understand. And this isn't a knock, because I don't think I would get it. I think it just takes a special kind of person to be the whole package. And he really is, because if you look at, as he started transitioning in 2019, he realized, I've done everything I can in the Super Juniors. I've won 3 titles. I've won the tournaments. I've wrestled everyone in this division. What's left to do? And he went, bulk up and go to the heavyweight division. Now, if you want to put that in perspective of UFC or any other sports, he basically ate and he trained and he hit the gym to go from one weight class to another to win a different belt. He wanted to go for the IWGP heavyweight. He had the junior heavyweight. He wanted the heavyweight. He had the US title, but he wanted to be the top guy in New Japan. And he knew to do that, he had to fight top guys and enter the heavyweight division. And that's what he did in 2019. He actually turned his back on Chaos, and he started a feud with Okada. So, because obviously Okada was with Chaos. And that would culminate in 2020, right before the pandemic, in the G1, where Okada would best Ospreay again, having 8 victories to his 2 losses. So actually, I think there's 7-2 this time. Still, he had his number. Okada's always had his number. He's always kind of little brothered him, little broed him, whatever you want to say it. But Ospreay's always come close, and they always put on 20, 30-minute bangers. And I think that 2020 showing opened up a lot of people's eyes to, this kid's the future of New Japan. Because you got to think of when he rose into those ranks, Omega left. The Bucks left. So Omega left. You had Okada, you had Ospreay, you had Tanahashi. You had a good foundation, but he had to step up and replace the void of Kenny Omega leaving. And that's what he did. And he did a damn good job of it.
You're not wrong. It's like I mean, what was it? The early 2000s of WWE when they had people go out with injury and they had to have people step up.
Yeah, it's like next man up when you're coaching. It's when Drew Bledsoe went down, Tom Brady stepped up. You have to have that mentality of if someone leaves their spot, that spot's up for grabs. You better take it. You better run with it. You better do everything you can to keep it. And he would grind. And, he would form United Empire because during the pandemic, him, Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis, Garrett O'Con, all of them would kind of live with Ospreay and stay with him, and they would train together. They would travel to shows together because you got to remember that he was on the other side of the world. He was staying in Japan. His family was in England. Everyone he knew was in England, and he was staying in Japan because he couldn't just go back and forth to Japan. So that's how dedicated he was to continue wrestling. Is he basically locked himself down in an Airbnb type of situation in Japan.
Yeah, and that would last into the pandemic where he really struggled and had a hard time just not being home.
And I think it really culminated because he struggled that year, but then Wrestle Kingdom 15, he finally gets his title. He got that beautiful belt. He brought it on the cruise. He was partying with that. You could see that belt meant something to him because unfortunately he did get an injury in 2021. So he had some shaky moments with the belt, but January 2021, brand new year. He wins the belt. He starts proving he can hang with the heavyweights. He's going out there and he's having all-time classics. He's now at a record 39 5-star matches from Dave Meltzer, which again, I know it's Dave Meltzer's opinion, whatever. You don't have to agree or disagree with it. Just knowing how the running joke for a while was Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay Tokyo Dome means 5 stars anytime either one of them wrestles. And he was living up to Kenny Omega's moniker of being the best belt machine. Well, Will Ospreay basically took that mantle and ran with it. Like, oh, you were the 5-star guy in Japan, you left. Now I'm the 5-star guy in Japan.
And that's why in the future we will talk about the match that those two had.
And it's wild to see that, as he's rising through the ranks, he gets on the Jericho Cruise. He kind of gets introduced to the AEW audience. And more people are realizing this is the Ospreay kid that's been rising in Japan because remember he wasn't even in his 30s at this point. So he's rising up. He's going through. He's the champion. He's wrestling all over the world. The world's opening back up, and then now you have 2022. You have Ospreay at the height of his game. He's at RevBro. He's winning the title. However, there's one thing that stood in his way. And that was Kenny Omega. The ghost of Kenny Omega stood in his way.
It lingered for sure. He was definitely haunted by that. He felt like he was second fiddle despite being the top guy. I mean, him and Zack Sabre Jr., Okada, probably the top names that I can name.
Yeah, and he's going out there, he cut a beautiful promo. If you go back to like December 2022 when they were building Wrestle Kingdom 16, he cuts an absolutely beautiful promo where he's like, you left. You took the ball and you left. You went, you took Tony's money. You didn't come back here. I've been here through the pandemic. I've been here busting my ass. I've not taken a day off. I've not given up on them. I am New Japan. And he busted his ass. And he really proved that he was the top guy. And then the forbidden door opened. New Japan's finally working with AEW again. And this really helped expose him to more of the audience because, there was, after the Ring of Honor folding, there wasn't really a lot of working relationships with New Japan. New Japan was very like, nope, we're protecting our own. But now you have AEW starting to poke around the corner. Wrestle Kingdom happens. Kenny Omega, Ospreay won. They finally go at it. They have a grueling match. They have the famous spot where Kenny puts his face through a table, but Omega still bests Ospreay. So Ospreay loses to Omega in Japan, and he's clearly heartbroken after this.
You can see how much it really did affect him going into the future of AEW. Like, his next couple matches, he wouldn't stop. He gave it more than his all.
He did. He showed up for a couple sporadic appearances in AEW, and then you can go back to our All In prediction show in 2023. And I said it the moment it happened because Chris Jericho and Ospreay were having a match All In. Ospreay wasn't even signed to AEW. and he's getting a match in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium against Chris fucking Jericho. I said to Emily, I said, this is his audition right now. This is Tony Khan saying, you want to come to AEW next year when your contract comes out? This is what I can give you. Wembley Stadium. And he gets a win in his hometown. And then, right before, a few months before that, sorry, I skipped a little bit, but a few months before that, he beats Kenny at Forbidden Door. So he's now familiar to AWI because he split 1-1 with Kenny. He fought Chris Jericho to All In. And then Full Gear, the most magical day in my life. We talked about this teaser that he signed this superstar coming up, and I joked with Emily, like, it's Ospreay. She goes, no, his contract's not up till next year because Ospreay been reminding us on TV, just wait, my contract's coming up next year, and then I'll see what I want to do. And there's rumors, is he going to go to WWE? And that was a big rumor for a while.
Which is amazing when you look back and you think WWE now knows about Will Ospreay. And
they clearly knew about him for a while.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny, and I want to touch on this because I always thought it was kind of fucked up. There's during WrestleMania week, after, flash forward this year, and they're talking about Ospreay choosing AEW, choosing to sign with AEW. And there was a little shot taken of, I guess he's afraid of the grind. And I always thought that was kind of fucked up because what is the grind? What do you mean by that? Because he's not working house shows on top of weekly television because he didn't move to the US? Because I feel like that grind is good for wrestlers who work in maybe that company or that style, but why is it a shot that he chose to still work weekly television and he's still grinding, still done a lot of matches this year? But why was that a shot? And I never understood that. And I kind of thought that was sour grapes by someone who didn't get the prospect they wanted.
Yeah, I definitely don't. That comment,
it was unnecessary.
It's so stupid. When you think about it, what grind? You mean missing Christmas with his family? Because no wrestler should. No person should miss Christmas with their family if that's truly what they want to be able to do. I think that it is incredibly lackluster to tell Will Ospreay, of all people, that he's afraid of the grind. You don't know his history if you're thinking that.
And look at, we just talked about, the Super Juniors traveling, to Rev Pro, Progress, going back and forth to Japan and England. Like those aren't little bus rides down the road. Those aren't 3-hour car rides. Like this man's literally traveling the world wrestling and is afraid of the grind. I never understood that, but it's because Full Gear 2023 happened. Tony Schiavone comes to the ring, and then we hear Elevated, and I think I lifted about 17 feet off my fucking chair that day.
I think it was maybe 18.
I couldn't believe it. Will Ospreay was all elite, bruv. And, I've always loved that he said bruv. Like, if you go back, again, another criticism he gets, he never cuts good promos. Go back and watch his promos. Yeah, he says bruv a lot. He also says fuck a lot. So the fact that he was able to censor himself for TV and not call people cheeky cunts and, fuck this dude and all this stuff, like, it's really impressive to see how he's adapted to American style television. And I just think that his history, wrestling in Japan, wrestling in England, and wrestling for independent promotions, and wrestling in the US and TNA and all these different places, he got exposure to different styles. I think he was seeing for himself which style, which place he wanted to work for. And I believe he chose AEW because he does believe that's where the best wrestle. And he does believe that they put the showcase on the wrestling, not just the storytelling. Because Ospreay tells a story in the ring. So for all those he doesn't sell, you're totally in shambles because every match is special. And when we get to it later, coming up in a little bit, I have some notes on why some of these matches are special. Because every match he does something different. He tells a different story. And that's why I was excited to have Ospreay come all elite. And we had to wait a little bit because he had one more match with Okada. He had to finish out his New Japan obligations. But then we found out that December, we found out Revolution 2024 was coming an hour away here in North Carolina. And I said, let's buy tickets. And one of the first matches they announced, Takeshita versus fucking Ospreay.
And we did not realize just how awesome it would be to be in the arena when his song goes off.
Yeah. I don't know why he stopped using Elevated. I know it was part of his heel persona for a while, but he used Elevated and then up to 2020, then he stopped using it. But when he brought it back in 2023, it lives, it breathes. I don't know if you guys worked out a deal, but thank you, because I think that's his song. When he hit that arena, And every one of us, 16,000 strong, are chanting, Ospreay, Ospreay, and just singing along and happy he's there. And just, that place was fucking electric. And yeah, it was Sting's retirement. You can say what you want, but that place was so electric for Ospreay.
Top to bottom, that card was amazing. You had Deanna versus Tony. It wasn't just Sting's retirement, and Sting didn't want that. It was every detail of that card was head to toe amazing.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you have it almost essentially co-headlined by Ospreay's debut on AEW Feud. And yeah, semantics. He was on Forbidden Door twice. He was on all, but as a member of the All Elite roster, we finally get to see it happen. And like you said earlier, when he took that nasty Frankensteiner on the turnbuckle and destroyed his ass.
And then got to meet Ric Flair with an ice pack on his ass.
Woo! It was everything I could have wanted as a fan. Like, I finally got to see him wrestle live. That wasn't, a random one-off match, because I had seen him at Ring of Honor twice before, but it wasn't a true match. It was like a tag team match. So I finally got to see him wrestle a one-on-one singles match against arguably probably another one of the best wrestlers in the world right now, Takeshita. And just seeing him in person, seeing how fast he fucking moves, you can't describe it. It's literally a video game. He's so fluid, and it's not just the flips and the dives. It's his transitions. He'll go for a hidden blade, but then the hidden blade doesn't work, and he transitions to a Stormbreaker, and then they counter the Stormbreaker into a vertical suplex, which then counters into a rolling armbar, and you're just like, how the fuck did all that just happen without them touching the ground? And then you see him get the fighting spirit, which everyone complains is no selling, but that's what I've loved about Ospreay, is that's part of his story in the ring. Is he does it to his detriment. He kind of gets that last surge of adrenaline. He wants to hit that last hidden blade, takes everything out of him. And sometimes it fails. Sometimes he uses all his energy and he gets beat because he didn't use it at the right moment. But it's those little subtleties that people forget about, those little subtleties that you enjoy, from how he sets the turnbuckle and waits, and then will pivot his feet. If he realizes he can't make the jump, he'll watch how he turns his feet and then will readjust himself. I don't know what kind of DNA these people are getting nowadays, what kind of genetic material they have over in England, but goddamn, it's definitely superhuman, because all these people that we're seeing come in these past like 5-6 years defy gravity from Mexico to London. Like, what is going on? What is going on?
I could not tell you, but I don't want it to stop.
And that's, I think, what's great is, look at his 2024. We were putting together our year-end awards, and I'm just going to put it out there. I didn't just pick out matches out of my ass. I was looking at Sports Illustrated. I looked at the Sportster. I looked at ESPN. I looked at a bunch of different sites for what they were listing in their polls for top matches of the year. I got 10 Ospreay matches. 10 in 2024. That's literally almost one a month. That's absolutely fucking insane.
That is insane.
And it's not a discredit to his opponents, because, as Kenny Omega famously said, that it's, wrestling is like having a dance partner. You can't have a 5-star match by yourself. It shows you he has chemistry to work with almost any single person.
Sorry. I'm thinking about Bryce Remsburg's match, the Invisible Man versus the Invisible Stan.
Why is that the first thing that comes to your head when I talk about this? Like, I think that just lives in your head rent free, and you're just like, ooh, this came up.
I love that. It's so funny. Sorry, one man could make a match. No man made a match.
I guess. Well, I was gonna say technically one ref.
Yeah.
What is this, like the Joey Janela pandemic match when they wrestled 6 feet apart?
Yeah. Appreciate it. Okay.
And that's what it is. Wrestling is an art, and Omega, Ospreay, Danielson, they're fucking Picassos. It doesn't matter what form of wrestling you choose to watch. You can't deny that they're not an art form of the wrestling style they choose to do. And whether you like high flying, whether you like this kind of style, you can't take away from the credit from the athleticism. And I think, honestly, the people who are the harshest on Ospreay are the ones who just see the one clip of him doing a flip, or the one clip of him doing that. They don't see the 20-minute match in between where he's gone 100 miles an hour the whole match and actually sold spots or done a move or, told a story through the ring. And I think that one of the things we want to do in this episode, because we appreciate Ospreay, we love to laugh, hence the name Live, Laugh, BRUV, is we compiled, with your help, 20 matches. Now it sounds like a lot, but it's 10 from his like New Japan independent scene and 10 from AEW because I wanted to, and no, it's not just the 10 on the awards, but I wanted to compile some matches and why we think they're special and why you should check them out. And most of these are on YouTube or streaming services. So check them out. I was able to look up 90% of them. Careful with some of the links, but in no particular order, because obviously we're not going to rank them. We'd be here for another 3 hours if we're trying to rank these.
We'd be arguing too much.
Obviously, I'm going to start out with the iconic Will Ospreay Ricochet Best of the Super Juniors 2016. Like I said earlier with Brian saying it was a video game, it was. They were literally catching each other in air. They were flipping itself around. When they do the double handspring and they kind of did the superhero pose and landed in the ring, which everyone kind of criticized, but it was a fucking iconic moment. Still staying in the Super Juniors division, we have Will Ospreay versus Kushida, Super Juniors 2017 final. A lot of people haven't seen Kushida's work besides NXT and TNA. This is what made me kind of really enjoy his work. Him and Ospreay I didn't think they'd mesh together, and they had a fantastic match. And it really shows what Kushida can do and kind of the potential he has if the right company uses him correctly. Here, another one that might get a little controversial, but I'm sorry, I'm going to keep this opinion. Will Ospreay versus Marty Scurll, New Japan Sakura Genesis 2018. That match was absolutely insane. You have Scurll, who's a powerhouse. You have Ospreay, who's flying around the ring. You have him essentially start to prove himself against the heavyweights. This is when he started to figure out, I can go against the big boys. So that's why I picked this match, because it really showed he could hang with the main eventers. He could hang with the heavyweights. He could fit that style. And the Spanish fly that he hit off the apron still just grosses me out. Every time I see him and Marty go over, it's just, they look dead. The next one I have for you guys is Will Ospreay versus Shingo Takagi, Super Juniors 2019 final. His pretty much last appearance in the Super Juniors, but again, Takagi, strong guy, proving himself. So, if you have a time machine, you go back, he was planting the seeds that he wanted to go in this division. So it's kind of like they were gatekeeping that spot. Him and Marty were kind of like gatekeeping that spot for him to get to the next division. So that's why I really enjoyed that match.
I believe that's one of his favorites when he talks about things.
Yes.
That is definitely something that he talks about with just pride at that match.
You can see him almost crying at the end. I wrote that. I have that in my notes. This is his emotions at the end of the match, because it meant so much to him, because he was saying goodbye to the Super Juniors. He was proving himself. He was kind of auditioning for the big brass at New Japan. It worked out well. And yeah, tears are definitely flowing at the end of it. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier, Will Ospreay versus Okada, the G1 Climax 2020. Insane match. If you saw World's End, it's very similar to that match, except Okada dominates more of the match. I really, really enjoyed Ospreay kind of turning on Okada here, because Okada didn't see it coming. So the emotions were kind of like staked there. And then the United Empire forming at the end of it was just a shock, because, you had Okada and Ospreay in chaos, but then you have him betraying Okada and forming his own faction, which the United Empire then would take over New Japan. So I put that match because it's kind of like a turning point in how he arrived in New Japan, how he kind of started getting his own identity. And then obviously we have Ospreay versus Takahashi, Wrestle Kingdom 14, 2020. Again, one of the last matches before the pandemic really took full swing. I really enjoyed the match. Where I talk about the crazy counters, this match had an insane sequence of armbar counters into leg twists. Things I can't even describe without seeing it. Definitely go watch it if you like technical and high speed athleticism. Obviously Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, Wrestle Kingdom 17, 2023. That's one we just talked about. Brutal. And it's the first time they teamed up, first time they fought. So it literally was a dream match. There was a lot of bad blood behind it, and the different crazy table spots, especially when Kenny did the "Here's Johnny" table spot, like that sticks with me every single time.
That's what I think of when I think of Kenny Omega. Just know that picture is what's in my head. Of all the things of Kenny Omega, it's the fucking table.
Get the table. Another one. This one's pretty recently too. Will Ospreay versus Zack Sabre Jr. at Rev Pro High Stakes 2019. It showed Will Ospreay wasn't just Mr. Flip, so that's why I chose this match. It was a very technical match. he had to adapt his style because Zack Sabre Jr. is trying to ground him the whole time. Because Zack Sabre Jr. in kayfabe is trying to keep the aerial assassin not aerial. So it's a great match again. It kind of goes against all these doubts that people have on him. And then the last one I have for New Japan is Will Ospreay versus Shingo Takagi, Dominion 2021. Another hard-hitting match. He was defending his championship. It was one of the stiffest matches that I could find on there. I mean, Ospreay's chest looked like hamburger at the end of this match. And again, another style that he fits up. So there's a lot more than those 10 for New Japan. A lot more. Those are just 10, I think, if you want to really see Ospreay's kind of rise from super juniors, light heavyweight to heavyweight. Those are the 10 I'd recommend watching because those really give you his style in each match, his adaptability, his chameleon-like ability to change his style, his storytelling, him changing to a heel. Because really, 2021 heel Ospreay was underrated. I mean, we didn't really get face Ospreay until 2024. So we had 3 years of him kind of a dick. And he played a really good dick, which is kind of hilarious to think about that. He's one of the nicest people, but it's usually the case. Nice people play the biggest assholes.
That's what they always say.
Maybe it's because we all have this pent-up rage, kind of like Billy Corgan says, despite all my rage, I'm still so rad in the cage. Maybe we just have all that pent-up fucking frustration.
Or we're just able to be who people say that they are. You see somebody else being an asshole to you, you know how to act back.
They say, give the same energy you give back. So now we're going to do some top 10 AEW. Again, you guys help pick these in the comments. I already know Emily would agree with most of these. I don't think there's one that I have on this list that she said I wouldn't have put. So I tried to pick 10 matches I really think defined him in AEW. So I start off with Orange Cassidy, Will Ospreay, Forbidden Door 2022. One of my matches of the year from 2022. Nobody saw that match being good. I think it really helped put Orange Cassidy, solidify him as a serious wrestler. I think Ospreay did a great job helping build him up. It showcased Ospreay, and I've watched that match too many times to count. It just, the comedy in it, him putting the hands in the pocket, him matching everything about it, and then just the insane Spanish fly they do off the turnbuckle just into an armbar, legendary. And then we can't talk about Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Wrestle Kingdom without talking about their rematch, Ospreay Omega Forbidden Door 2023 in Canada.
And happy birthday to Mongo. This man was way too happy to have that on his birthday.
Do you blame me?
No.
And then we got the old Shawn Michaels spot where he's blowing the nose in the Canadian flag. He's wiping his ass with the Canadian flag. The match was brutal. It was bloody. It was hard-hitting. And Ospreay would win back the IWGP US title from Kenny. And I just love that he turned it into the British title instead of the US title, in which that story will come up a little bit later. And he basically went back full heel. He joined the Don Callis family. Kenny Omega had just gotten kicked out, and now you have Ospreay because Don Callis replaced Ospreay. It's the storytelling is great in it. It's the second match. I can't wait for the third one, but look at those first two. Look at the difference in styles. Third one's got to happen in London. I'm sorry. It's happened in Japan. It's happened in Canada. It's got to happen in London now. That way it's each of their home countries and Japan. It has to happen in London. Another great one, Will Ospreay versus Chris Jericho All In 2023. Maybe not the best, masterpiece of a match, but seeing him enter Wembley, 80,000 fans singing his song, seeing his entrance, seeing him just look at the crowd, knowing that he was just soaking the fuck out of that moment. He was just taking it all in. I think made that match a little bit better, in my opinion. I think seeing his genuine happiness in that match and seeing Jericho putting him over was huge.
Something to remember about Wembley Stadium is that's where a lot of these people were able to watch wrestling for the first time live.
SummerSlam.
So to be able to be in there and wrestle themselves at Wembley Stadium is why it's so impactful. No,
and, again, yeah, like you said, growing up, seeing the SummerSlams and, think about the early 90s and 2000s, how much wrestling probably went over there. Not a lot. Like we complain that we only get wrestling once a year here, whatever it is. They probably got wrestling once a decade, so if they got wrestling, you pretty much had to go whether the card sucked or not. So for you to be able to say, I'm one of the few who got to compete in Wembley, that's already huge in the wrestling business because, again, that doesn't happen for a company that wasn't named WWE.
So to put it in perspective, it's like being able to see WWE and AEW going to Australia. very far and few, and that's how it was for London and for the UK for a while. Very, very far and few.
That's why a lot of these companies, they started their own independent promotion. That's why RevPro became so big. That's why WXW in Germany became so big. Progress, all these, because wrestling is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just Stamford, Connecticut. It's not just Jacksonville, Florida. It's not just Nashville, Tennessee.
Chicago.
It's Leeds. It's London. It's Ireland. It's New Zealand. It's Australia. Everywhere you go, everyone. It's Inuvik, Canada. Everywhere you go, there's wrestling. There's literally a website called Wrestle Maps. You can find wrestling anywhere around the world, and they have a little pin on where they are. So if you're curious, what do they have for South America? They'll tell you where they have South American wrestling, and I think that's cool. And I think seeing someone like Ospreay, who wants to wrestle everywhere he possibly can, is awesome. And I hope we get to see him wrestle on the cruise, because technically he only made an appearance. But speaking of wrestling, I have a few more matches to recommend. Again, no particular order and ranking. Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, Dynasty 2024.
Jeff and Rachel were there for that match, and they talked about just how exquisite, and they've rewatched it over and over again. They absolutely loved being able to be there live, and I don't think words can put together how much that match meant to either of them. And we will never truly know just how much that meant to Bryan, but Will tell you over and over again how much that meant to him.
And I like the storytelling, because that's when the Tiger Driver story came into place, where he hurt Bryan Danielson's neck, which really started his retirement tour, and he refused to use the Tiger Driver. And I liked that subtle storytelling. People hated it, but again, he's like, no, I'm not. But that's something he had to pull out when he wanted to win. He pulled it out to beat Bryan, and he felt guilty. Ospreay versus Ricochet versus Takeshita, triple threat, Wrestle Dream. We talked about earlier, 2005 TNA being the best triple threat of all time. It might have been unseated by this one. Probably one of the best triple threats I've seen in a decade, if not more. And to now probably say he's on par with AJ Styles in these kind of matches for a kid growing up watching him has got to be a great feeling.
It can't be better than that. I mean, what gets better than that? First, we were like, yes, Ricochet and Ospreay. This is going to be fantastic. And like Takeshita, and we're like, what?
Were you like another one?
Like, how is this going to work? And it did.
And then speaking of Takeshita, Ospreay versus Takeshita, Revolution, like we said, maybe personal bias because we were there, but again, his first match, it's fantastic. First match against Takeshita, they really had their chemistry. Obviously, Kyle Fletcher versus Ospreay, both Full Gear and World's End. Two compelling stories. I still think it's a trilogy. But look at Will Ospreay didn't want to use a Tiger Driver on Kyle, and Kyle used a Tiger Driver on him. Again, the storytelling. He knows him. He's a United Empire stablemate. He's his best friend.
They lived together for years.
Like we talked about the pandemic. They lived together in the pandemic. Yeah, they lived together. They traveled together. So again, the storytelling, and Mr. Don't Sell, when he wrestled him at World's End, Kyle brutalized him. And then when he fought Okada, which is the other one I have on here at World's End, he was selling the entire match. So again, two different stories, two different matches. Ospreay versus Swerve, Forbidden Door. Can't forget that one. Fantastic match, world championship match. Really showed Swerve can hang with everyone. Like
it showed his complete diversity.
It did. Because Swerve had won the championship at Dynasty, and his first major match after Double or Nothing was Will Ospreay. And then he had to fight Bryan Danielson at All In. Like it's a lot to overcome, and it really built up Swerve. It's built up Ospreay. It's built this division. Ospreay versus Pac at All Out. A lot of bad blood between them. A lot of great chemistry. So those are the 10 that you guys voted on that we kind of picked. But there's so many more. Like I said, 10 matches that he had this year have been nominated. Josh Alexander, honorable mention, Josh Alexander in TNA. Against Amazing Red back in 2017. If you just type in Ospreay versus, you probably won't find a bad match. And I really hope that by listening to this, you can understand why we love Ospreay, why we are excited to get his exclusive figure that comes out in a few months. That is the All In special, because he's special. Ospreay is someone that is a once in a lifetime generational fucking wrestler. You have The Rock, you have Stone Cold, you have Kenny Omega, you have Will Ospreay. He's someone that normal wrestling fans, whether they're a super fan like us or whether they just tune in once in a while, they're going to know his name. because he's someone that transcends his spot. He transcends the business.
And he's the talk of town. It doesn't matter what company you watch. He's still talked about because he's so fascinating. Every little aspect of Will Ospreay is incredible to watch.
And again, we talk about, and this is how we'll end. So to wrap up, we're going to talk about his outlook for 2025. Look how good he had at his rookie year in AEW. He killed it. In my opinion, spoiler alert for if you don't tune into our award show this Friday, how dare you, because it'll also be on Spotify, Apple, wherever you stream podcasts. He's running away with the rest of the year. And I really don't see how someone can dethrone him. Now, that's a mantle he's going to hold up to next year. So one of the things, I'm going to put my first bold prediction, he wins the Continental Classic last year and he defeats Okada.
You mean next year?
Yes, 2025.
Yeah, I think definitely we're going to see it come down to Okada versus Ospreay again. I think that that's going to be the only time they run that match back. I don't see that happening again for a year.
Agree.
I think that they're going to build to it. There's going to be teases to it. And I think that this is what's going to make it such a big feeling match, because those big matches are what Ospreay overcomes. Look at him versus Fletcher. Look at him versus Ricochet. Ospreay comes out every single time on top.
And then he puts people over when he needs to. He lost 6 times in 2025, but he only lost to Fletcher or Ricochet or Okada. He's Swerve. He's not losing to people who, are just, it's Joe Schmo off the street. It's elevating people. And he actually, fun fact, he chose to lose to Swerve. He said himself that there was a time where they wanted him to beat Swerve for the title. And he goes, I actually think it would be better if he wins. It'll help make him look more legit. So his selflessness, his understanding of the business is also what helps him out. So another quick 2025, he's going to fight Kyle Fletcher at Grand Slam Australia. I think that's a game. I think that's the rubber match.
I want to see him versus Orange again. I will continue to put that out. I would love to see a mixed match with him, and I honestly don't even care who it is. I just want to see the fluidness flow through the women's division with him.
I mean, maybe him and Alex Windsor. Maybe they could do a Rev Pro versus Mina and Ricochet. I thought that was something like that could be fun.
That would be really nice to watch.
You have all the contrasting styles in that. That'd be fun. I think I'm going to do one more crazy prediction. I'll let you do one more crazy. I think one more prediction, because obviously I think Okada and Omega are doing All In. Who do you think his opponent for All In is? Because I'm thinking his opponent is someone we have not talked about him facing yet.
I still want to see him versus Moxley for that title.
I think he faces Sammy Guevara in Texas. I think that they build a program with Sammy Guevara because I think that's someone that he have a lot of chemistry in the ring with. I think that it doesn't have to be for a title, but I think that could be like a grudge match. Maybe Sammy wants to prove himself and he takes on. I see him.
They have 6 months to build it.
So I'm saying, so I can see how him wanting to work with some of the other pillars, some of the other town. And I think you got to get him with some new matchups. And I think a Sammy Guevara, or that kind of chemistry help kind of elevate him to the next level. I think that'd be fantastic.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's our Live Laugh BRUV episode. And if you want to be like us and support Ospreay, but also support us, you can check out Pro Wrestling Tees /CWK podcast and get your own Live Laugh BRUV t-shirt, now on sale. So by the time you hear this episode or see this episode, it's already available to buy. So I think it's just one of the things that we've been talking about wanting to do for a while is talk about Ospreay. We didn't really know how to do an episode about him. So we wanted to kind of just tell you why we liked him, give you some of our favorite matches, and give you a little backstory. So let us know what you think down here in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe us at all of our socials at Cruising With Kayfabe, CWKpod.com. And remember, always
keep the kayfabe.